We're getting to the end, except that Revelation is about a series of endings for the various characters we've met so far. Chapters 17 and 18 are where we finally meet Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. So, who or what is Babylon? Now, thankfully, John has an angelic guide who introduces the woman as the great prostitute, and with her the kings of the earth have committed adultery. With the name of Babylon, she can be seen to represent godless, socio-economic society that flaunts its values and pleasures in denials of God's ways. It's self-sufficient, self-seeking and self-serving, no need for God. It's manifest in so many ways over the centuries, starting with the building of the Tower of Babel, Babylon, essentially the same word. And that was in Genesis 11, where the people declared, "We will make a name for ourselves." And again, the name on the forehead is about ownership, and it's clear with whom the Babylon woman is in alliance. The woman in the wilderness is in stark contrast to the one we met earlier in chapter 12, God's people, who were kept safe in the wilderness from the threats of the dragon. And she's also going to form a contrasting opposite with the New Jerusalem as the pure bride of Christ, who we will shortly meet. However alluring and decadent the woman is, the rich and the poor, powerful and the lowly have totally fallen for her. And for all her so-called attractiveness, she has two dark secrets which are laid bare by the commentating angel. First of all, she's sitting on a scarlet beast, which in terms of its blasphemous names is either the same or very similar to one of the beasts we met in chapter 13. And again, this is replaying something that has gone before, but with more detail and a different perspective. And once again, the spiritual forces behind what is seen are plain for all to see. Second, she's been the cause of much suffering for Christians, as she's described as being drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. We then move on to the whole business of trying to understand the beast, who is identified as having 7 heads and 10 horns. The 7 heads are identified as both 7 hills as well as being 7 kings. So much for one object meaning just one thing. Then if you really want to get confused, try this one. The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7. Now at this point, most commentators, and I don't mean any of the angels, those who write books on Revelation, they tend to end up playing a game called Spot the Emperor, in order to identify what John is writing about. But the only problem is they seem to start at different places, have differing methods, and then reach different conclusions. Okay, can we make any sense of this somewhat seemingly convoluted set of imagery? Well, perhaps. Perhaps the numbers are representative and are saying something far more meaningful than trying to play Spot the Emperor, which does seem a rather odd way to be doing it anyway. Both 7 and 10 are significant, 7 heads being both 7 hills and 7 kings. And remember, 7 is about completion. So perhaps this is the state setting itself up as the ultimate manifestation of power. Although Rome was built on 7 hills, it may be that Babylon is not just pointing at Rome, but all governments, systems and ideologies that have presented themselves as the ultimate one to the exclusion of God. And in both the 7 heads and 10 horns, there is again the sense of limitation, with everything operating under God's sovereignty. The last king will remain for only a little while, with the 10 kings reigning for just 1 hour, clearly representing a limited period. Every empire, like Rome, has claimed to be long-lasting and even eternal, but they have all eventually come to an end. Again, there is this sense of a final onslaught against the Lamb and the followers of the Lamb. So this is the second time we've met this. But we'll wait until we've seen all references to this event. But yet it is self-defeating, as the Lamb will be victorious together with his followers. Now chapter 18 officially announces the fall and the end of Babylon. Remember that the audience is the 7 churches. And the message is that in spite of what present circumstances look like in terms of repression, persecution, opposition and so on, it is the believers who are part of an eternal kingdom. And the present day rulers and prevailing ideology they will eventually fail and fall. The alluring nature of Babylon is clear in the lament. And there is the message again to the churches to not be part of her. Come out of her, my people. And throughout Scripture, there is this call to be a holy and distinct people who are in the world, but not of it. The message is constant, but the challenge is different for each generation, as compromise is always possible. The cry of the believers has been, how long do we have to suffer in this way? And here the answer is certain. Rejoice over her, you heavens. Rejoice, you people of God. Rejoice, apostles and prophets, for God has judged her with the judgment she imposed on you. And we learn too that justice will be swift, with this happening in one day or 1 hour. Now, for the first century believers, Babylon, in the form of imperial Rome, appeared to be indestructible, and its persecution and opposition to Christians unrelenting and unyielding. But this vision opens their eyes, and ours too, to the day either when it self-destructs or when God decisively strips it of its power.